He found himself alone in a cave with a wounded dragon. The dragon was dying, but she liked our MC for his kindness, so she wanted to give him a farewell gift. She decided to teach him the secrets of dragon magic. Day after day, week after week, our boy trained tirelessly. He ate unknown fruits that grew in the cave and grew stronger through training with the dragon. Soon, even as a small boy, he surpassed many adult mages in magical power and understanding of magic. But the dragon did not stop there. She sealed a part of her power within him so he could use it in the future, once he grew up and became stronger. But how did such a brilliant boy end up in this cave? It's a long yet interesting story that needs to be told from the beginning. We've mostly read stories about weak losers and runts who die and get reincarnated, only to become overpowered powerhouses later on. But this story is about a king who had plenty of achievements under his belt before he died. The reason behind his death remains a mystery. But after his death, he opens his eyes as a baby, and contrary to the lavish room fit for a king that he'd expect, he wakes up in a humble home. His mother's name is Alice, a kind-hearted woman, and his father is Reynolds, a dependable and charismatic man, if you can overlook his occasional childishness. The era the king is reborn into is much more archaic. After observing his surroundings for weeks, the king finally comes to the conclusion that he's learned everything this world has to offer. But that's when he finds out he's wrong. Later, he discovers that this world has magic when his mother uses healing magic to treat a wound inflicted by his father's mischief. It's then that the king realizes there's so much more to this world than he ever imagined. And if he has to be brutally honest, he actually knows nothing about it. Time passes, and once the king is able to crawl, he often sneaks out of his crib to read books and expand his knowledge about this world. Ever since he discovered this place, he's been sneaking out every night to learn more about it. He's found that the world he's been born into is made up of 3 major kingdoms: Elenoir, the elven kingdom deep in the forest; Darv, the vast underground kingdom and home of the dwarves; and Sapin, the human kingdom, which is also the most populated region. Both this world and his previous one share a monarchy system, but rulership here is passed down, not earned, which basically means that this world is vastly underdeveloped compared to his old one. He realizes the reason for the lack of technological advancement is the presence of magic in this world. He's been studying the fundamentals of magic ever since. In his old world, there was a life force called Ki, which practitioners used to strengthen their bodies and weapons through rigorous training. But this world has a similar force called mana. However, unlike Ki, which exists only inside a person, mana is present all around them. The power to control mana is largely genetic. Roughly 1 in 100 children possesses it, and it can be used in various ways. The 2 most common methods are augmenting and conjuring. Augmenters enhance their bodies with mana, allowing them to possess incredible strength, defense, and agility. However, their weakness lies in their limited range. On the other hand, conjurers emit mana into the outside world, bending their surroundings to their will. But to cast a spell, they must supplement their own mana core with mana from the environment. Interestingly, his mother is what they call a deviant, more specifically, an emitter. Deviants are rare types of mages with unique abilities, and emitters, like his mother, specialize in restorative mana. According to the book he read, a mage's first awakening happens between early adolescence and the late teenage years, when their mana core manifests. The concept of a mana core sounded uncannily similar to the Kai Center from his previous life. In his old world, children were taught to meditate and sense the fragments of Kai scattered inside their bodies, gathering them into a single place to form a Ki Center. But when our little king decides to try this technique himself, to his surprise, he nails it on his first attempt. Though his mother interrupts him before he can do anything significant, time rolls on and 2 years fly by. Yet Alice feels like she hasn't fully figured out her little boy. She's learning about him slowly, piece by piece. She's named him Arthur, and he's the most precious and adorable thing in her life. One day she notices her husband teaching their little one how to swing a stick and fight, which sets her temper flaring because their baby can barely crawl. Alice loves documenting everything, keeping a daily diary, and moments like these never fail to put a smile on her face. She's also noticed that Arthur absolutely loves visiting the small merchant strip in central Ashbur. So, instead of shopping for groceries once or twice a week, she's taken to going downtown every other day. Of course, she tells herself she's not spoiling him by doing this. It's all for educational purposes since Arthur loves learning and seeing new things. And the fresh food she can bring home daily is just a bonus. Watching Arthur grow up so quickly, she sometimes wonders what he'll be like when he's older. With Ray as his father, she's sure he'll have an interest in becoming an adventurer, but she can't help worrying. She only hopes he fares better than the naive young teens dreaming of making it big as adventurers. Now, if only she could do something about his perpetual habit of sneaking into the study. It's even tempted her to move his crib into the study room, though that's a decision for another day. So far, this is the overview of what Alice has learned about her son over the past 2 years. One day, as Arthur peers through the window, he spots his father preparing to perform some magic. Reynolds closes his eyes in order to concentrate. The intensity of his concentration leaves Arthur brimming with curiosity, eager to see what kind of magic his father will perform. Suddenly, the pebbles on the ground began to lift. As his father reaches the peak of his enchantment, the debris floats only a few meters into the sky. Arthur is left utterly disappointed seeing this. While Reynolds looks quite pleased with his achievement, Arthur feels equally unimpressed. Watching his father take 3 minutes of utmost focus just to lift some pebbles a few feet is just ridiculous. He can't help but think doing it physically would have been easier. Just then, Alice joins him by the window. When she glances outside, her expression shifts to mild annoyance as she notices her husband has ruined the front yard again. So far, Arthur has learned that his father is an augmenter, which only deepens his curiosity about himself. He wonders what will he be when he awakens his mana core. After watching his father practice for a while, Arthur decides to retreat. As he tries to climb off the bench, he stumbles and struggles to get down. His eyes are half closed from focusing too hard, but Alice misinterprets this, thinking he's getting sleepy. She scoops him up, deciding it's time for his nap. But the poor boy quickly claps his tiny hands together and earnestly requests his mother to let him study instead. The innocence radiating from him is overwhelming, leaving Alice with no choice but to give in to his request. Arthur sits down with a book larger than himself spread open in front of him. Suddenly, a crashing noise echoes outside. Alice fears her clumsy husband might have knocked down yet another tree. She hurries out to investigate, leaving Arthur with a golden opportunity to practice his mana core formation. You see, aside from accumulating knowledge about this world, Arthur's greatest accomplishment so far has been his progress in forming his mana core. Over the past 2 years, he's painstakingly moved tens of thousands of tiny fragments of mana within his body, gathering them near his solar plexus. Arthur understands why it typically takes until adolescence for a mana core to form naturally. The fragments move agonizingly slowly toward the center, making it an arduous task for both the body and mind. But our boy's relentless efforts haven't gone to waste. He's almost there, just one last piece remains. As soon as he places that final fragment, an explosion erupts inside the house, obliterating the entire structure in one powerful blast. Outside, Reynolds instinctively shields Alice, wrapping her in his arms to protect her from the searing heat and debris. When the dust finally settles, the devastated couple turns to find their home in ruins. Alice is beside herself with shock and grief as they rush toward the wreckage to check on their son. Reynolds frantically pushes aside debris, but when he notices his son, his worry quickly turns to shock and then to amazement. There, amidst the destruction, their son floats casually in the air as if nothing had happened. Arthur looks completely unfazed, his tiny body surrounded by a faint glow of mana. After forming his mana core, the little one finally drops down onto his feet, and he can finally feel the presence of the mana core inside him. He's already starting to enjoy the sensation of having a mana core inside, and even the trees around him seem greener. But then, he realizes his house has been destroyed, and he has no idea who or what caused the damage. 5 years pass since that accident. Along with his mother teaching him how to read and write, Arthur has also been learning the basics of mana manipulation and augmentation. At first, since his body was too small for sparring, they focused on basic body workouts. Not long ago, his father decided it was finally time for Arthur to practice with the wooden sword he'd received for his 3rd birthday. Reynolds takes him outside to train, and as Arthur stands there with his newly acquired wooden sword, his father holds up a tree branch and tells him to match the flow of mana with his breathing. Just like your heart or lungs, your mana core is just another organ, his father explains. But Arthur doesn't think these abstract and vague instructions are going to teach anything to someone who is just literally 4 years old. Arthur takes his stance and exchanges a few playful blows with his father. The sparring drags on, with Reynolds clearly enjoying himself, but Arthur grows increasingly frustrated. Our boy knows that his father would not let him go until he accomplishes something noteworthy. With no other choice, he gathers his courage and swings his wooden sword hard enough to break the stick his father is holding. After this significant move, he immediately expresses his desire to return to his studies. Once our boy gets back to his studies about magic, we learn that in this world, strength is measured by the color of a person's mana core. Mana cores start off black, tainted by impurities like blood and other particles within the body. Over time, as these impurities are filtered out, the core's color changes, becoming purer and more powerful. The progression moves from black to red, orange, yellow, silver, and finally, white. Each stage is divided into 3 shades: dark, solid, and light, with lighter shades signifying greater purity and strength. As our boy was deep in concentration, his mother interrupts him by urging him to come in for dinner. As they sit around eating, Arthur feels a growing irritation at the constant interruptions to his studies. Reynolds begins talking about finding a proper mentor for Arthur to further develop his skills. Alice immediately objects, pointing out that Arthur is only 4 years old and far too young for such a step. Reynolds counters that their son shows remarkable potential in mana manipulation, even at his young age, and he doesn't want to hold him back. Alice, however, stands her ground. She insists that she will not send her child off to some distant city. Reynolds reassures her by explaining that it isn't just any city, and promises that his trusted friend will personally take care of Arthur. Arthur tunes out most of the conversation, finding his parents back and forth exhausting. They suddenly turn to him and want his opinion on the matter. His father asks if he has any interest in leaving for the big city to study under a real teacher. My guy can't help but feel unsettled that his father is literally asking the opinion of someone who's only 4 years old. Anyhow, he plays the part of being a kid and meekly asks if his parents can't just go with him together. A sudden silence falls over everyone, but soon they burst into chuckles. Turns out this gullible couple hadn't even thought about the possibility of going with their kid as well. With that settled, his father makes the final call that they're all heading to Xyrus City together. The day finally arrives for them to leave their home, and they're not traveling alone. A party of adventurers will be tagging along with them on the journey. His father greets one of the adventurers and introduces his son to them. The little one quickly bows his head in respect and expresses his gratitude for their help in accompanying them to Xyrus. This adventurer really likes the kid's mannerisms and is already fond of him. His name is Crench, an augmenter, and his specialty is the spear.